Yes, it's Hey Teves, Hey Teves. But I was spending this Shabbos. I'm in lockdown, like everybody else probably, or most people in lockdown, and this experience of isolation, it's a very intriguing. I was very frightened about it. What happened was I was finding I had more time to do things. And then I discovered that I didn't have time because I had many things to do. So one sense of freedom was overtaken by a sense of duty, giving shiurim and Zoom and writing and so on and so forth. And yes, Hey Teves is a marvelous, marvelous yontif to remember. But this week I was looking at the Deher magazine. I have a subscription for that, and it came through. And the editorial, let's say, of the Deher magazine sets an agenda which is not straightforward to listen to. Meaning to say like this: the whole story about a miracle as opposed to avodah has been an ongoing theme in Hasidus, Chabad particularly. There's reference there to people, the Rebbitzin of the Tzemach Tzedek said, yes, miracles were wandering on the floor, but nobody bothered to pick them up. Why? Because Hasidus Chabad, particularly with all the explanations we know, demands something more in a pneumius, something very, very inward and an inward introspection. So that was a description of the tension between Hasidus Chabad and Hasidus Chagas, the Polish Hasidus, which acknowledged that externally, when you say who is a Chassid, it's focused on levushim, garments, what they wear, shtreimel, langerekel, etc., etc. And Hasidus Chabad was resisting all that, even though the shtreimel, the Tzemach Tzedek is known, I don't know about the Marash, but the Rashab also wore the spodek, and the Frierdiker Rebbe also wore the spodek. And I must tell you, there was an incident that just came to my mind that in London, there was a certain individuals who thought that it would be very appropriate for the Rebbe to be awarded with a spodek. He should wear a spodek. It was a particularly Yud Shvat or an occasion, the 70th year, whatever, 80th, 70th year. So they prepared a spodek. And that spodek was delivered to the Rebbe just before that occasion. And the Rebbe took the spodek, and probably, I'm not sure what the words he said, was something like, tach v'tach, tuaschein, appreciated, thank you very much. And that was, it lay externally, laid outside, it never came into question. The Rebbe was not changing. Now, that's a significant statement about the external vision, impression of Hasidus. And in this small essay in this Deher magazine, which you've probably seen, it's worthwhile subscribing to. There's a debate. Yes, what's the conclusion? Inconclusive. Yes, miracles are nice to impress people. Yeah, but you've got to keep on the Vogel, and then you go backwards and forwards. So it's a kind of a tie. Nobody won this debate. So the idea of Teves being marked as a miracle is something which it has a point, so to speak. But on the other hand, the emphasis is very quickly reverted into avoida, pneumis, tachlis hakavona, dira betachtonim, appreciation of the Rebbe and all what he has done. So that is an opening remark, which is worthwhile echoing, because this is an ongoing tension, and maybe it's supposed to be that way. I don't know. I want to go back to my very first Farbrengen and contrast it with this Teves Farbrengen of today. And that, my very first Farbrengen, which I may have shared with you, was in 1953. Now, don't count the number of years. It's a long time ago. It took place in a converted Gothic architectural church to a synagogue called Adas Yisrael. And the rabbi there was Rabbi Yitzchok Dubov. We were Talmidim of Manchester Yeshiva at the time, and we were invited to come and join this Farbrengen. Well, to those who are, if there's any people from Manchester listening to this Farbrengen, they'll recognize an address. It's called Waterloo Road, off Cheetham Hill Road and off Bury New Road. So I've given you the location where it took place. It was known as, euphemistically, as Klein territory. So if there's any Kleins in the audience, they'll be able to react favorably or negatively, however they feel. That converted shul didn't have the benefits of central heating. It had a large oven somewhere centered, and generally Yutes Kislev, very cold. And so we were there in this shul. How many people were there? Quite a few Yeshiva Bochrim who come at the invitation of Rabbi Dubov, and there were a number of Balabatim. And this Rabbi Dubov stood up, and it was my closest image in my imagination to the Alter Rebbe, stood up, and he had a whitish beard. So this was a saintly type figure. And he insisted on repeating the story of Megillus Esther, changed into Megillus Yat Kislev. Okay. Did we all understand? I didn't. His Yiddish was certainly, but there was a kind of an aura there. And it was assisted by being freezing cold. So we had to tighten our coats more and more. And that was very difficult to sit in a freezing cold room. And so that was our, so to speak, our hachona to our Farbrengen. And the atmosphere overtook us. And because the atmosphere overtook us, it didn't matter really what was said. All we know that he has to say what he has to say. So that was 1953. Now, fast forward to 2020, the end of 2020. Every one of us is sitting comfortably, very comfortably in our own dining rooms. Central heating, mandach Hashem, of course, everybody's got central heating. If it's too cold, you switch it up, you put it down. Everything, we are in a classic sense, maybe a happy aloha, not so, within the class of mafunak. Mafunak I'm a funak. What's a mafunak? He can't tolerate discomfort. And it's such a reality of not tolerating discomfort that the Shulchan Aruch allows for it. He says there's certainly surim, but a mafunak, if you've reached the stage of mafunak and you want to classify yourself as a mafunak, okay, go ahead. And you're permitted that chumrah. So where are we between 53 and 2020? We're all sitting very comfortably at a Farbrengen with Zoom and all the gadgets and all the things we have to have in order to communicate with somebody across the world is all there for us. No pressure at all. So the first question is, if there's no pressure here, how can a Farbrengen be effective? Because a Farbrengen is associated with pressure. And Amol, that everyone said, you come, and in 770, there was no Mufanokim there. The people were pressurized and crushed, and the lines used to sway backwards and forwards. It was tough. It was tough to listen to the Rebbe. Tough. So what is the ingredient that we have in a honor to a Farbrengen, which should be some pressure? There's either one or two answers. One is, there's no pressure. Have a good time, enjoy yourself, listen to the speaker, you like him, you don't like him, sing a few songs. It's a beautiful experience, but without any pressure. Can there be a beautiful experience without any pressure? Well, I was trained to think, and psychologically, I think people must recognize this. No, there can't be. There can't be any pleasure or joy without pressure. And if you go through the Shulchan Aruch and you go through the life experience, you'll see a mother has children with great pain. During the pregnancy, very often, many months of pregnancy, a woman is forced to sometimes to stay at home in order to have that child. Or the ones who are better off, they don't have the trouble, but birth pangs they have, and the travails and pain of having a child is tremendous. And that's why it's explained that a woman has to bring a korban when she's had a child. Why? Because she makes a vow, never again. The pain is so significant. Oh, she brings a korban, so she has another child. So how do you evaluate this Farbrengen? And this is what I'll bring to everybody's attention. Can there be such a thing as realizing a truth with all the beautiful things that are going on? And the answer must be, in the tradition of Chabad, that one has to discover the discomfort. One has to try and find what is discomforting. Well, to any sensitive person, the first discomforting aspect which comes to light is that if I'm in a state of constant comfort, how can I acquire? So it causes that a person should have a feeling of dissatisfaction. And that feeling of dissatisfaction is very real. And the more real it is, the more chance there is that you'll have an effective Farbrengen. if that's the equation which I'm using at the moment. Now, many people will say, no. Well, and when somebody gets the time and lets me know why no, there has to be some effort, mental effort, excruciating, painful effort in the limit of Torah, which means in Tanya, a person got to apply himself. The whole development of the Sfira HaChochma comes through application. What does application mean? You're looking at something, a problem, you don't understand it, you're discomforted and very irritable because you can't understand it. That irritation. It says in the Maimah in Mitzrayim, they were slaves, they were punished b'choyme or vilvenim. So you can imagine the Jewish people in Mitzrayim, they had to haul rocks, choyme uvenim, bricks. There was no rocks in Egypt, as we know. It was bricks that had to make them. And then they had to make them with straw. And then Paro was giving less raw materials and less more materials. And he wanted the same number. They went through hell. So Chassidus again and says, you know what? We have the equivalent today. Equivalent? What do you mean equivalent? Yes, because choyme do kal v'choyme, levenim do libun hilchasa. Let me just say like this. When you're having to work out a kal v'choyme, looking into what is genuinely understandable as something which is kal, lighter, and choyme, something which is more severe, then you have a kal v'choyme. And libun hilchasa. Libun hilchasa. What do you mean libun hilchasa? The halacha has to be purified and clarified. So that pain of kal v'choyme over venim, do libun hilchasa, that is a substitute for our effort in redeeming the Reish-based Netzutzas ve'erev Rav Olabitom. There were 200 Netzutzas HaKadosh from the 288, which there are 288 sparks of Kedusha waiting to be redeemed. 202 were redeemed by Mitzrayim, and the left 86, which was left, which is Gematria Hateva, 86 is Hateva, 86, that is now our task from the redemption from Egypt 2,448 years ago. And now we're in 5,081, 781. Those are the number of years that we have had to make an effort to redeem those Nitzitzis HaKedusha. So it says in Hayom Yom about the Baal Shem Tov, he knew where those Nitzitzis were, where those sparks were, so he went there. He sent a shliach there to these places. Now it's all wrapped in derech hatev, in a natural phenomenon. And the natural is that if you go in the street and you meet somebody with a gilui of the Baal Shem Tov, which the Baal Shem Tov said, every person you meet in the street is behashgocha protis, and that hashgocha protis, that divine individual providence, because it is God himself, Atzmusai umahusai, which is directing your footsteps in this place. Ashehechi v'sadi gova. God prepares the place where you go. So to miss that opportunity of telling somebody, first as a Lubavitcher Rebbe, God has not left us. We have Chassidus, we have Pnimis HaTorah. Then in some way, Mashahu, we redeem ourselves, so to speak. And if we don't use the opportunity, then chas v'sholom, it's a continuation of the golus. So that is the contrast between the two situations of 1953 and today. And if anybody's got some questions on that, they can ask somebody and find out whether it's not true. Maybe it's not true. So that is the first point I want to say. The second point I want to make is about Teves. Now, since the Hair magazine has paskened that you're allowed to call yourself a chassid if you appreciate miracles, and there's some Maramakomis which are really very powerful. Maramakomis are letters from the Friedrich Rebbe to the Rebbe. They found that. So it's very problematic. Well, let's say Teves. So what's Teves? Well, I must tell you, my first experience of Teves was on Yud Beis Tammuz. How'd like that? Innocently, maybe not so innocently, I came to 770 because I had a friend who I wanted to introduce him to a Farbrengen, and he came along with me, and he didn't speak English, and I had him, he had in his ears one of those things. At those times, we didn't know, all we know is a thing. That was the beginning of something which has dawned into full fruition today. And he was listening. And in the middle of the Farbrengen, the Rebbe went, I've got no word for it. He raised his voice very much, and he started to speak loud and even in pain. He was full of angst and dread. Angst means you're anxious about something. So he changed everybody's mood. And for a year and a half, however long it lasted, till Teves of the Geula, people were very, very frustrated, and no less than the Rebbe himself. The Rebbe used to go to the Ohel very frequently, and he stayed a long time. And he stayed after Shkia for an hour or two, and he came back and daven mincha. Now, that sounds completely, well, to a simple Jew, it sounds completely out of order. I remember in the Machzike Hadas in Manchester, we used to daven in a shul called Machzike Hadas. This was from the Polish mainly. It was at number 17 Northumberland Street, and I think the Mancunians present will say that it's still going on. In that shul, again, there was only an oven, freezing cold. So I went over to a Yid. He was one of the two Yidden in the shul who had a beard. The rest didn't have a beard. They were Balabatish Yidden. A lot of them had been survivors or whatever. So I went over him. I said, "Tell me, Wolf." His name was Wolf Dresdner. So I said, "Tell me, Wolf, was it the Meise mit Lubavitch? Was it Lubavitch?" Ah, Lubavitch. See, Lubavitch redet so. Sie are moide fast zwei Sachen. They're frightened of two things. For the Eibishter, they're frightened of the Eibishter. And second of all, they're frightened of Shkia. He was a Belzer Chossi Grade. So I don't think it verstehst. Lubavitch, that was his summation. So now you start to think like this. Shkia was a very, very strict practice. And then the Rebbe goes to the oil and comes back. You know, everybody knows the basic, the Mishnah Berurah stuff. He was weak. He was faint. And this event, was a tragedy of greatest proportions to the Rebbe. There was another issue, by the way, to divert a second from that tragedy to another tragedy, which is a tragedy for those people who know of Mihu Yehudi. Ben Gurion in 1953, it says in the state of Israel's, they have no written constitution, but they said every Jew has a right to come back and live in Israel. That was it. So after a year or two, there was challenge because there were people who said, I'm Jewish, but they weren't Jewish. Oh, so the question came up, who is a Jew? Who is a Jew? You have to define it. So Ben Gurion, by the way, wrote to 100 wise men around the world, including Einstein and the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and you name it, they're all there. Give me your definition. So the Rebbe wrote back, first of all, a very brief letter. He says, a Jew is a person born to a Jewish mother or converted to Judaism al pi halacha. Yours sincerely. 2-line letter. Well, Ben Gurion wasn't looking for that. But he wasn't upset because the next day, the Rebbe wrote a second letter. And what was the second letter? He wrote a second letter. What was the second letter? I answered you on your letter as to who is a Jew because that is the fact. Al pi shulchan aruch. Now, if you want explanation as to why I say that, he wrote a 3-page letter. A 3-page letter explaining why. That was the problem of Mihu Yehudi. And for those people who don't know, and I think everybody should know, that problem has not been resolved to this day. Because the political parliament ruled that they would legislate as to what is a Jew, who is a Jew, and they said a Jew is a person who's born to a Jewish mother and converted, full stop, omitting al pi halacha. When that legislation went through, for years and years and years and years, the Rebbe had gestürmt. He gave him no peace. That was and it's still to this day not resolved. So there were crises in life, in the Rebbe's life, and this crisis of Teves, which came from what people call, as an American expression, from left field, out of the blue, ridiculous. So there's no words that can describe it. And that sentenced the Rebbe to a punishment of 1.5 years. And then, soft called soft, there was the Teves, the great victory, which everybody knows. Okay, it's a victory. So the Rebbe turns around and says, who? I say, another limud God. Whose fault? Blame. You know the name, the blame game. Everybody likes to blame somebody else. So you said, don't feel bad, because this is what Chava said at the very opening moments at 3:00 in the afternoon on Friday afternoon, when God asked, why did you eat from this fruit? He says, it wasn't me, it was somebody else. Blame. I don't know whether you're familiar, but there was a great psychologist called Abraham Maslow. And he was lived 100 years ago. And he said like this, why am I talking about psychology? Hey, Teves. Yes. Listen, listen, because everything matters. And he said a person needs, first of all, he needs to breathe. Then he needs to drink. Then he needs to eat. Then he needs clothes. Then he needs shelter. So Dr. Tversky, the psychologist from Pittsburgh, he said, you know what? There's another thing a person needs. He needs somebody to blame. And if you look into our own reactions, the Rebbe never blamed anything in anybody. The Rebbe blamed himself. He never addressed anything to anybody else because that was not the Rebbe. The Rebbe took responsibility without blaming anybody. That was the Rebbe's particular way. And in this case, he had anyone to blame. So what did he say? Oh, yes, there's something to blame. Someone to blame. Talk about himself. There is a sefer among the 104 Sepharim which were stolen. There's one sefer which is called, I don't know, maybe somebody is more knowledgeable, will be able to tell me exactly what it was, but it was from a Rishon from the era of the Chokrim. The Chokrim now are called philosophers. The English translation for Chokrim is called philosophy. The word Choker means, you should investigate and understand well. So this is, they were looking into what's made the Eibishter. Achdus Yisrael is a Munah in the Eibishter, and then the concept of Echad, which is a second mitzvah. It was a thin sefer, and it was talking about that. So a few enthusiasts went around, and they discovered the sefer. I'll tell you something. I'm already looking at my clock. It's half an hour. Ich habe was noch zu sagen. A lot to say, but we'll make a break for one minute. But then again.
Okay, Rabbi Vogel. Rabbi Vogel.
First of all, L'chaim, everybody. Whoever is protecting us for so many years will continue to protect everybody, and everybody will be blessed with a good year, a Shana Tova, a new month, a new year, and very happy days. bis zum Kommen von Mashiach Tzidkenu l'chaim.
Amen, l'chaim. Rabbi Fievish, we'd like to really know when at first were you invited to get involved in and the details around it?
If you want to know that, first of all, there's a mistake, I think, in the question. When was I invited? Nobody is invited. I think to anything. One assumes a sense of identification and responsibility. And when the first moments, I want to say to you, it was at this Farbrengen of Yud Beis Tammuz. The Rebbe was speaking with such passion. I was genuinely, I like to test what I'm saying. Yes, I was trembling. And there was, a kind of a tearful response, because I've never, ever seen the Rebbe in this position. Never. And he was speaking to an audience who knew nothing, all right, that 99% of the audience knew nothing. There were, of course, a few people who knew before, but we knew nothing. And suddenly this thundering voice of the Rebbe, and it went on for a long time. And it incorporated this famous saying, giving a warning to everybody that if they are holders of any of these Sepharim, they should know that are holding bombs in their hands. And very soon after that, he said, in order that these bombs should be converted into Zisa apple, sweet apples, one should immediately get the Sepharim back. Now, I knew an antique book collector, which many of you will know, Jack Lunzer, Oliver Sholem, and he was a great collector. He had a lot of Sepharim. So my first port of call was to Jack Lunzer. And I schlepped with me a tape recorder. The tape recorder was about 15 inches wide, 6 inches high, and about 8 inches deep. It was one of those tape recorders which was on, I don't know what words to call them, what they're called. I don't know what they're called. Anyway, there were these big tape recorders. And I plonked this tape recorder in his room. And he sat quietly and we listened to this Yud Beis Tammuz Farbrengen. And he spoke Yiddish. And he understood Yiddish, and he smiled to me. He says, "Bombers, Zisa apple." Okay, I own up. The Zohar, Krakow Zohar, well, some year, about 400 years ago, 300 years ago. Right, that's number one. What else? Another sefer, I forgot what's it. 2 or 3 Sepharim. Takonas Hevra Kadisha of Amsterdam. This was written on parchment. Amsterdam, the print was there, of course, but they had written the Takonas Hevra Kadisha in Amsterdam on this format. It was a very, very interesting document. And he had that. So we arranged that I would come and pick them up, but first we had to get the money. So I would send a note of this, the holder of these Sforim usually had an official receipt that they paid. In this case, the Zohar was $6,000. So that's a long time ago, but $6,000. So he's got a receipt for $6,000 bought from another person, okay? And this deaconess, I forgot whatever it was. And on Friday afternoon, I went down to the office in Hutton Garden, and he gave me, arranged for the money to be sent to him from Rabbi Chodakov. Or Label Groner was managing it at that time. And he gave me the books. And this was a very, very painful but highly unusual event. So he was holding these for him, and I took them back. And where did I put them? I put them in the top bedroom in a small closet at the top. And those two Sforim grew into 4, into 6, into 8, and eventually about 30 Sforim. And there was quite a bit of anxiety. You know, we're sitting on these Sforim, which all have been redeemed in one way or another. And here we were. In going through this experience, because I want to get to the Ikka, which I think is the Ikka. It's a little consequence to recall the exact details. They've been written in books. There's a book being written which talks about this and all the details. Everybody knows the story. And I think the moment is now for interpretation. What do we do with it? Further in this Deher, which is the first one I have on the description, there's Hamaiso Ikka. Meiser, ganze Meiser. They make a full article about Hamaiso Ikka. Yeah, which is because the Rebbe was in Poil. Something good has got to come. And that's what the Rebbe said, if I go back to what I was starting to say, that the Rebbe said, yes, we are guilty. You know, there's a famous vort from Reb Mendel Futerfas. Mendel Futerfas, he spoke at Farbrengen, and he's got a tremendous way about it. And I think many people will appreciate this. He says, Chotonu, when we say Oshamnu, Gadnu, Chotonu, there are 4 explanations as to what Chotonu means. When a person takes his right hand and touches it to his heart, and he gives a clap, and he says, "Oh, Shamnu, Baganu, Chotonu, Vosmeita." What's he mean? So he says the 4 explanations. One explanation is, Chotonu, we sinned? No, we didn't sin. That's the first Piddush. And he said, everybody goes through this rota. Okay, then there's a second Piddush. What's the second Piddush? Chotonu, I sinned, but it wasn't me. It was somebody else. Chotonu, somebody else sinned. Okay, that's the second Piddush. The third Piddush is Chotonu, we sinned, but I must tell you, God, I must tell you, I'm going to sin again. I'm going to sin again because that's my nature. Until he comes to the 4th level of Chotonu, which he says, Chotonu, it wasn't somebody else. There was a sin, and I'll sin again. And he goes through the barrier and he says, Chotonu, I sinned, and I will never sin again. So if you want to examine, it's not Elul now. Now Elul is not the time for this type of drosha and vedler. The Rebbe, when he said Chotonu, we have sinned, he was the one who was saying it, because he was the only one who picked up the responsibility. There's a very powerful psychological vote. management in management, which is good to share. Responsibility devolves onto the one who accepts it. It's not something hängt in the Luft. Who's responsible? Who's responsible? Responsibility, it devolves, it finally falls on the person who accepts it. And the only person who accepts responsibility is the Rebbe. At that moment and forever. There was once a mice in Yechidus.
Rabbi Vogel, I'm really sorry. I'm going to interrupt a second. You mentioned before that people know the story. There's lots of youngsters here on the group here who are not aware. And I think that you, Hashgacha Pratis, just a minute. I think that Hashgacha Pratis, you mentioned your first encounter with Rabbi Dubov, where he kept on insisting the Megillah of Yutes Kislev. Even though the story had been heard before and before and before, we're still reading the Megillah, we're still reading the story of Yutes Kislev. And it is, to us, it would be very precious to hear the details involved in the run-up to Hey Teves. So we appreciate all the gems and the pearls that are coming our way from you, and they're refreshing. And we haven't had this for a while, but don't underestimate. We really would appreciate, and everybody on this is hoping to hear those details. So if you want to, if you don't mind, I'd love to home you in on that. And then obviously the Farbrengen will lead from there to understand the meaning of this, the deeper meaning.
Well, I don't want to come back to you and offer some disagreement, but I must tell you, there is, in the Megillah is Esther. The Megillah is Esther. Very interesting. 167 words, psukim in the Megillah is Esther. 167. And in the final few words, the Megillah says like that. Is any person who reads the Megillah here, Haloi heim kesuvim v'sifrei modai uporas. They're written. The Rebbe has printed so much. Everybody should go back to the books they have. And if they don't have the books, they should get the books. And they should read it, because the story is, from its simplest way, that someone stole the Rebbe's books from the library, and the Rebbe took him to court, and the court ruled that he has to give them back. End of story. And that is a very, very succinct review of what happened. You want to fill it in with a few more details? Go ahead. But I don't know all the details. And not that I don't know, some of the details I've forgotten, because I'm focusing on what I want to focus, and that is Hamaisa Ho'eka. If some of the details come up in the wash, fine, okay, so Zanazoi. But this is not an educational class for a group of Hasidim who are the Babish Hasidim, committed to what they are committed. They will find out the details. So thank you very much for your offer. I just prefer, if you don't mind, Rabbi Itzinger, because, you have ultimate power. God has given you ultimate power. Wow, sounds shocking, yes. You have the power to put everyone on mute. So when you talk about power, well, I remember a few things, Vashti. So let's not trade in that word. I just say, L'chaim, responsibility. The Rebbe said, we are responsible. But So nobody wants to hear. You want to hear about checks. You want to hear about Nissim. You want to hear about this and this and this. You want to hear this stuff. I'm telling you, you want me to give a document on it. I've promised you in the last 5 minutes and 10 minutes, I'll tell you those things. But listen to what is Negea Lepoil. Responsibility. So anybody who wants to join the Rebbe and say, I am also responsible, let them say, that's very good. But the Rebbe said, I'm responsible. And the Rebbe cranked during that period was full of dread of what could happen. And people are still trying to get their heads around it. Dread. You saw if you saw him. No, nicht gefällig. Print a few, print them more. Okay, fine. The responsibility that something was cranked the Rebbe to the degree which I've tried to, not very well, to portray to you, is your responsibility and your responsibility and my responsibility and my responsibility. Every single individual, it devolves onto the people who accept the responsibility. And he found a sefer. He said, that's Masakin. So he chose a book. He chose a short book. I don't know why he chose that book. Maybe it's the only book which he didn't neglect. I don't believe he neglected any of the books. He was booking all the books. And the Kamesipurim about how the Rebbe's memory never faltered. Khan's got through your whole Meisel's story. So we're talking about this sefer, which talks about Achdus Hashem. There's a din, a mitzvah of Emunah Hashem, and there's Achdus Hashem. And I want to go on. I want to give you forward notice. I want to go on to talk about the printing of a new book, and that is called Social Vision. And this book needs to be spread out. And it is being spread out a little. And when the Rebbe said that this is from the Sefer, one of them, he found out a thin Sefer. What's the Sefer? Anybody know? It's called Oira. It was something. Very thin book. Achdus Hashem. You know Achdus Hashem. I heard from Rabbi Duv once. He said, when teaching us once about Likutei Torah, he said, Likutei Torah is not an interesting sefer because I read Perushim on the Torah. There's Perushim on the Torah from Bereshis, Shina Maisa, and Noach, Nochshen, Lech Lecha. Everything has got a story. It's a beautiful variety of stories. No, but hey, Tom, Likutei Torah, you start with Likutei Torah, so you learn Likutei Torah. And what's it talking about? Achdus Hashem. Continuity. Noach, Nochamo, Achdus Hashem. Nochamo, Lech Lecha, so it's a boring book. It's a boring book because it's talking about one story only.
Rabbi Vogel, are you talking about Derech Emunah, the Kunter's Derech Emunah?
Yes. Thank you. Derech Emunah. So what do you think is in spelling out what Hey Teves means to us, what it should mean to us, what it meant to the Rebbe, that this Derech Emunah here, so he had it printed. I read it, we bought it, I read it. If you compare that with Derech Mitzvah, for example, it does no comparison. Derech Emunah. So the responsibility, it's not someone else. It's the Rebbe said, I am responsible. I don't know, whatever it is. So here, this is a Meiser, which is the real Meiser. Not about checks of $140,000 made out to Michael somebody in Switzerland. It's not, of course, when you mention $140,000, it's got a glamour of its own. Aber nicht das redt mir Hey Teves.
Rabbi Vogel,
Yes.
Not the checks. It's when to hear you say how you felt at the time when listening to the Rebbe and you'd base Tammuz Hey, that's a very real thing to hear. But what we would love to continue to hear, not exclusively, is what was the Rebbe's responses or any interaction that you had with Maskiris when you were purchasing or receiving these books. This is not checks.
Okay.
This is
okay. I'll take your point. So, by the way, who am I speaking to?
My name is Shaul Wilhelm. I'm in Oslo.
Oh, Shalom Aleichem.
Aleichem Shalom, Rabbi Vogel.
Right. Okay. The story is like this. As these books were coming, it was Jack Lunzer, basically. Jack Lunzer had an acquaintance, more than acquaintance. He was called Michael, in Switzerland. And he had a collection of Haggadahs, supposed to be the most wide collection, important collection of Haggadahs in the world. And he had purchased a book, Haggadah. The Haggadah from, what's that Hungarian town called? Scholl, do you know? Remember the name? Whatever, you'll come to me in a second. So there was a Haggadah printed in that Hungarian town, and it was, I think, on vellum, on parchment. Kitsia, yeah. It was a Kitsia.
The Kutsi Haggadah.
Huh?
The Kutsi Haggadah, I think it's called.
Kutsi or Kitsi?
I think it's Kutsi. Whatever. Yeah.
Whatever. Okay, that was a Haggadah printed, and this Michael had it. So I found out that through Jack, I found out that he has this Haggadah. So I phoned him up, and I didn't know him personally, but I said, I believe you have a Haggadah, and this we Rebbe would like to have back. He didn't like the way I spoke to him because I was a bit brusque. Not that I intended to be, I didn't know him. So he said, so he told me, yes, it's good. So how much is it? It's $140,000. So fine, I put the phone down, and then I phoned up Label Groner, and I told him this Kutsi Haggadah is in the hands Flersheim, Michael Flersheim, Oliver Scholl. And he had this Haggadah. And I said to him, it's 140,000. So then Rabbi Chodakov mixed in. I still remember it very vividly. I was sitting on my couch, and there's a phone call comes through, and he says, "Dort sprech hier sprecht." You know, half German. Half German. He sprecht Chodakov, and I'm sitting now with a checkbook on my table. And I have a pen in my right hand. And if you will tell me to write a check for 140,000 to this person, I will write it. I am now your shliach. So I was so overwhelmed, I said, Rabbi Chodakov, excuse me, I need to think about it. And I put the phone down. So I was free of that confrontation anyway. And 5 minutes later, or less, I phoned him up. I said, yes, you should write the check. And he wrote the check for $140,000. And that went to Flersheim. And that book, Sefer Haggadah, was picked up by Rabbi Rosenfeld in Zurich.
Mendy
Rosenfeld in Zurich. Yeah. So that's the story with the check.
Didn't the Rebbe listen to the conversation?
But did you hear anything from the Rebbe about this? Did you hear anything from the Rebbe? Was there any response from the Rebbe in your involvement in this?
There was. I wasn't looking for that involvement. I wasn't aware of that involvement, but there was once an involvement because when I was talking, I collected those number of books together, and we're growing in number. They came to about 30, 34 until I gave them over to the Yeshiva Bocharim, who were in the I think that was the first kitta of the Yeshiva Gedola in London. I gave them over to each one because it was, nobody should suspect, because if it's antiques for him, it could be valuable. So we gave over to each one two Sforim, and they took it back. So at the time when I had about 10 or 12, so I said to Rabbi Groner, what should I do with them? So he said, I'll find out. So he talked to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said to him at that time, as he reported to me, Zogem, we darf warten, weil kriegen noch. You can wait because he'll get more. That was one of the responses from the Rebbe on the Sforim coming back.
Right. So that's interesting. That's interesting because the Sforim in Eretz Yisrael, the Rebbe said to keep in Eretz Yisrael.
Correct. Yes. There were 104 Sforim in all, I think. That list of Sforim was given to me by Lebel Groner. It was 104 Sforim, the date, the name of the Sefer, the Mechaber of the Sefer, the year or whatever it was, and how much they'd bought it for. And so I didn't, as I said before, there were 30. I said those were in Eretz Yisrael, yes, they went straight back to wherever they went. And there was I saying this, it's difficult. I must go with Shola. Let's say evaluate. You are of age this year's. I'm of age this year's. Mandy Itzinger is age of this year's, and children of these years, and so on. So everybody's coming in to this review from two things. First of all, a lack of knowledge, which we all have the lack of knowledge, but also each one is coming in with his own perspective. And all the perspectives are created, limited by understanding through the ages of the various individuals who are coming into this Farbrengen. So it's not easy to measure your words speaking to a 10-year-old or a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old, 40-year-old, and they've got different backgrounds. And many I don't know. I know a good number of this group because they're for English. So it's more important, I think, for those individuals around this Farbrengen table to focus on what they particularly are interested in and to explain it, deliver a moving, captivating, if you wish, a talk which will move people from their present situation. And let me go back to social vision in a second. This social vision, we tried to start marketing it in February 2020. Now, February is a very important date. That was pre-COVID. Okay, pre-COVID. It's a normal situation. March was already COVID. So any plans were interrupted. And then in September, there was talk like all governments are just at this moment, as each one of you know by their own experience, the government, the leaders of this nation are completely confused about what to do and how to handle this problem. But nevertheless, we, Shluchim, have to do what we have to do. And we have to talk about our experiences, which will be a follow through to this end, Hamaisa hu ho'ika. And the Maisa is Afotzas Hamayonas Chutza, to the very, very chutza, which does not only mean like Norway, which is geographically chutza. It doesn't even mean Norway because of the remnants, the few remnants of Klal Yisrael who came from the Holocaust there, and a few other indigenous people who live in Norway. It means the wider world, and everybody's in a wider world, whether you're in London or you're in New York and Sao Paulo, in Chile, wherever you are. In this magazine, by the way, there's a wonderful article in this Der Herr magazine about Meir Zeiler. Meir Zeiler crept to fame when he had a picture of Lord Sieff, Marcus Sieff, Lord Sieff, the chairman of Marks and Spencer, and the chairman of the Weizmann Institute in Israel, and he put on tefillin. And that made waves all over the world. And it's continuing to make waves. And I mean, personally, in a situation just now when I am aware or know of some of their relatives, which has from Friday night when I read it, and now it's Motzei Shabbos, I have to do something about it. So the waves are being made on Maisa Ha'ika. And this Maisa, which was started, by the way, just by the way, 3 or 4 years ago, with an English Talmud. His name is Rabbi Vogel. He's not listening. It's Shabbos, so you can relax. He started to learn Hasidus with this Dr. Philip Wexler, who is the author. He happened to be in Rochester, in his position in sociology, and he was learning with him. And from this grew and grew and grew to the state you have at this moment that I'm talking to you about social vision, authored by Dr. Philip Wexler. And we are trying to spread it out. And as I said to you, symposiums have been made. There's going to be a major symposium in January based out of New York, but it means nothing, New York, because you're in touch with everybody around the world. And this is really going around the world. And it's a book, which I'm going to show you on a picture now, if I can get the picture onto you. And this is the book.
What is it about?
That's the book. So now everybody has seen the book. And it's available from Yechiel Wilhelm in Jerusalem the Gold. And I push people to read it. What is it? It's a description of how the Rebbe, yes, this reads as follows. Let me read it to you. At the top page with the picture of the Rebbe, and he says like this: the Lubavitcher Rebbe's transformative paradigm for the world. Now, for those people who don't understand the Lubavitcher Rebbe, they have to be told that there's such a person who is the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Then we have to translate what transformative means. Transform means to change from one position to another. Paradigm, what's his paradigm? What's his paradigm? Paradigm means a meaning. If anybody wants to offer an alternative translation, what it means, a meaning for the world. So it's like this. So this book, we believe that it will offer a transformative paradigm. It means if you read the book, you will be transformed to see how this book can help the world. And it's not Tov Reish Samach Vov. And it's not Eta. And it's not Derech Mitzasecho. And it's not Likutei Torah. It's not even the Maskil Ha'eson on Biurim and Tanya. It's none of that. It's letters which the Rebbe wrote when he first found out in 1963. 1963. And don't pretend that it doesn't matter to you because you weren't born in 1963. It does. It still matters. It still matters to what you're doing today because the Churban that happened in 1963 is ongoing today. What is the Churban? What happened? So I'll tell you what. And it's vital to know. There was a custom in America state schools that they would repeat what is called, don't ask me what it means because I'm not American, it's called the Regent's Prayer. The Regent's Prayer was said in every single school in the United States. Certainly in New York, millions of children, Jewish and non-Jewish. What was the prayer? The prayer was, please God, I'll be a good boy, I'll behave well, God bless America. Something like that. It wasn't, the whole prayer lasted for a few seconds. Came along a few members of the Reform movement and said, this is an interference with the Constitution of the United States, which declares that there has to be a division between state and religion. Very simple words. And to the shame of the Supreme Court in America, it was carried by a majority of 5-4. 5-4. 5-4, 4 against. And that decree was enshrined in the Supreme Court in the United States. The Rebbe, when he heard this, started and mounted a campaign to change the Constitution or change this or change this. It cranked the Rebbe that there were people being brought up now in America and they were missing this prayer. By instant Stiebel, nobody knew about it. But the Rebbe cranked it because he was talking about Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael means each and every Jew. So gesagt, up till now, they had some recognition of God. How? 20 seconds, half a minute, prayer to God was the minimum, actually minimal. Can't get less than that. And the Rebbe had gestürmt, and he said shluchim, and he sent this, and he sent this. And he wrote letters. And this is the letters which are extracted into the social vision, which is the first point which is made in this book, and that is social vision means social. What does social mean? The Rambam, by the way, he doesn't paskin, but he said the Rambam in one of his writings, he says, Ha'adam hu medini. Ha'adam hu medini. So what does that mean? The Rambam, everybody knows the Rambam. Medini. Everybody knows, by the way, the 40 years this year that the Rebbe instituted the learning of the Rambam. So everybody's got a very great derech and deference to the Rambam. And he said, I'm not sure there's a lot, Ha'adam hu medini. A person is a social being, a social animal. What does it mean? It means that a Jew is influenced by an other, and another is influenced by a Jew. That's his natural condition. And Asher al-Kain, when people don't have the opportunity to recognize and say a bracha, or not to say a declaration in the faith of God. So this is what's in this social vision. For many pages, it's taken out the tampsis of what the Rebbe said. Now, frag badia. I ask you, every one of you, what are you doing in picking up that painful experience of the Rebbe and be mefetz Chasidus, which is, I think, believing in God and recognizing one God comes under the category of Hafot Samayotis. I'm not being cynical about this. This is the reality. And if this is the reality, then how could you not put your hand and to help? And then he talks, by the way, in this piece, he talks about Rabbi Lipska's attempt for the prisons in America, where senators and congressmen have given support. It's a major struggle because what the Rebbe believes is that there should not be any punishment of prison. Prison, imprisoning a man, denying his freedom is not part of God's attitude in the Torah. It doesn't exist, exceptionally. In some cases it does, but you take him in. And so he's battling it, and he's giving voice to it, and he's giving voice to the Rebbe who got the arguments. And he's talking about Herman Branover's thought in gaining energy from the sun. And other matters too, which are the 6 principles which he talks about. So when you talk about this experience which he had in Teves was a terrible thing, terrible, unbelievable. Okay. So we come now to celebrate it. Celebrate. $140,000, yeah. Another few things here and there. I didn't tell you that Jack Lunzer on Friday afternoon, this is what I heard from his daughter. His daughter said, did he not tell you that on Friday afternoon when you came to the office to pick up those books, he sold a major parcel of diamonds which were lying for years? Did he not tell you about this tremendous miracle that happened? So I said, of course he didn't tell me. If he told me, I'd ask him for more money. So why should he tell me? Of course, the miracles that goes on here and there, of course they were, but this is the major debate which is recorded in this the Hair magazine, which was an old going on problem. But now coming back to what we say about this social vision. So I just want to say L'chaim again, and after that, we'll have another Nigun, and after that, we'll have another Weiter Shmuz, and if I get caught up with this social vision, I'm not going to say I'm sorry. I want to get caught up with it. L'chaim, everyone. L'chaim.
L'chaim l'vrocha.
Rabbi Hitzinger, I thought you were in charge of the Nigunim.
I will see it as another interference, so I'm lying low.
You're lying low because you see it as an interference. Do you feel comfortable with that?
Lead the Nigunim. Go ahead.
Ay, 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 I forgot.
My area is my Shreina. That's why I can use
as my
Shreina.
Shreina.
The Rebbe said you are my Shreina. They're not bombs anymore. That's what you told us.
Rabbi Gessel, tell me, how does a nigun, a communal nigun, operate under Zoom conditions?
I think we need like a shliach tzibur to sing a nigun and be shemea ka'oina, because otherwise it's very difficult. It doesn't sound that great. But so you're the shliach tzibur. Du halst the shofar.
No, not for nigunim, no. Maybe you take this job yourself. Kraine Digata, they have a bank vanker. Any other volunteers? Who's this gentleman in front of me? Oh yeah, I can see. What's he called? Moshe Kessler. Moshe Kessler. Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem. Moshe.
A guten Motze Shabbos, a freilichen hey Teves. Rabbi Shvei. Who's Rabbi Shvei? Is Rabbi Shvei there? Okay. Who's this Rabbi David? Rabbi David. Who's Rabbi David? Modern Farbrengen, verstehst. Everybody can go on mute, and everybody can be muted, verstehst. It's, strange. Okay. Ay, 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 Okay. At the very beginning of this, we were asking before about the beginnings, who gave responsibility. I said took responsibility because for anybody who has some idea is automatically conscripted into the into service. We all understand this, and we all understand this. This is the way a chassid behaves. At the beginning, I was in conversation with Reb Heschel Gorman. Now, Reb Heschel Gorman, I presume he's not here, but he lives in London, and he has Sforim. He has a collection of Sforim himself. A very special collection. So he knew what was going on in the bookie, they used to call it the bookie world, the books. And he said to me that there's a collector of Sforim who's a Geder Chassid, and his name is I think Yankel Heitner, and is Malabos in Gold's Green. And I feel that he's got an interest.
His name is Yitzhak Heitner.
Okay, Yitzhak Heitner. Thank you. And he has an interest, Anyway, so I phoned him, or he didn't want to speak to me. And I wrote him a letter or something. Anyway, the end of the story was that he did have Sforim, which came from that collection, which had been sold on the open market. And he had them. But he didn't want to communicate directly with me. But he would do it through Dayan Yossel Padwa. And Dayan Yossel Padwa is the son of the late Av Bezdin by Henoch Padwa. And he's a Rov. He lives in, I think, in Homely Road. And he said he will do it through him. So how do you arrange it? Because the Rebbe had said like this: anybody who wants to return the books, should, as we said before, give a receipt for the purchase of the book. Or if he did not have a receipt, then he should go to a Rov, and this Rov would give testimony that this individual applying to return the books, this Rov would say he's Nemon, he's a trusted person. So whatever money price he links to a certain sefer is acceptable. Okay. So I received from Dayan Padwa, I received one list, a second list, and each list had the numbers for him and the amount of money that he had spent on this sefer. And at the end, Padwa would say, Nemon olai divrei Rabbi Yitzchak Heitner, is Nemon olai, and therefore is acceptable. So that came with a signature from, the list came with a signature from the Dayan Padwa. And against that, the money was returned. It weren't large sums of money, £400, £600, whatever they were. So I added up to total money, and then I gave the money. And it happened once or twice. And then Dayan Padwa said to me, by the way, I need a bracha from the Rebbe. Because I offered him, I said, is there any cost? You know, after all, you're doing a service, so do I have to pay you anything? So he said, no, you don't have to pay me anything, but I need a bracha for his daughter. His daughter was not unmarried at that time, and he needs a bracha. So I wrote back to the Rebbe, and I told the Rebbe what he had said, and he's a bracha, and he gave his name and his mother's name, his mother's name, and fine, okay, that was the bracha. 2 weeks later, Dayan Padwa phoned me up and said to me, the bracha is mekim geworden. The bracha was fulfilled. So everybody got what they needed, what they wanted. That was a time, by the way, I did recall. I don't know if you, in America they know it, because in America, the Rebbe offered tremendous brochas to all people who came to him from wherever and wherever. And in France, not England, because there was a company called Trans World Airlines at that time, TWA. Okay, so TWA. So TWA had in their offices fax machines. I'm not sure whether younger people know what a fax machine is, but there is such a thing. It used to be such a thing. In the prehistoric days, a long time ago, there was a fax machine. Sometimes a NES, a modern NES. I got one. It cost £1,000. For £1,000 for a fax machine, it was a you know, we say you write something in here, it goes to America. Push it nissim. So they had about a dozen or 2 dozen fax machines in the TWR office. So Rabbi Zimov, Sholem, he approached them and he said, "Can I use these fax machines?" He said, "Sure, let's get this done." So he used, and there were hundreds and thousands of faxes being sent by these TWA fax machines to America for the brokers. And the Rebbe, when he went to the Ohel, he had not just one packet, but he had dozens and dozens of envelopes, large packed, stuffed envelopes, taking people broker. So the brokers, the opportunity to get a broker for everything and anything was it was like an open season. A remarkable thing. So that's why I say when Dan Padva asked me for the brocha, and he said brocha mekun geworden, you know, it was kamat certain it was going to be, because this was the currency. This was the currency. This was the currency which the Rebbe was using. Well, he still uses that currency. The Rebbe still uses that currency. That's the currency. No dollars, no bitcoins, no sterling, no francs, not even euros, nothing. This is the currency the Rebbe uses. You write to the Rebbe, give your name, your mother's name, and that is, he will give a brocha. Not by fax anymore, but by this oil, you type it out. That is the currency. He's giving the same brochas. If you don't believe me, try it. You can look. It says it's a Fievish. Iggeres HaKodeš. Nimtza Yosem Yatim Mibechoyoyi. Now, these are very, very serious questions which each person on Hey Teves should particularly address. What does it mean, Yati Bechayehi? Yati Bechayehi. If I'm quiet, it's because I'm quiet. I think everybody should be quiet. This is the moment. And therefore, when you talk about asking brochas of the Rebbe, to believe that the Rebbe is here is not something which the world understands. But that is life. We are on one side. That's why we're called Jews, or rather Hebrews. We always came from the other side. That's the nature of a Yid. And certainly the nature of a Hasidic Yid. And certainly the nature of a Chabad Chosid, that we are forever on the other side. And if you're not on the other side, you should think twice about where you are. And unless it's demonstrated with a clarity and a certainty which the certainty affects the emotional will to devote yourself to what the Rebbe is doing. These are very, very sensitive areas in personal understanding of who we are and what we are. This is Teves. It's another reminder. By the way, talking about reminders, Yutes Kislev in 1953 was probably the only Chabad holiday in the year. Yeah, Chayil. Chayil is, people don't know what Chayil is even. Do you know Chayil? Well, something happened. Those festivals, Chayil or Yutes Kislev, used to be celebrated by the Rabbi. But somehow, with the crowding of the agenda, suddenly the first Yud Shvat came onto the calendar and nudged and pushed away the attention to Yud Kislev. And then you had Yud Alf Nisan. Well, Yud Alf Nisan, what? Is anything greater than that? So, as Fievish states in the Sifrei Hasidus, that mocker in place cannot be occupied by two individual things. That's the law, physics. If I'm in this place, you cannot be in this place. And if you're in this place, I cannot be in place because we take up space. Now, these teachings, this in Hasidus, take up space. Yes, you take up space. You take up space, except when your space is not filled with your body, but it is filled with ideas. And if in the world of thought, in the tzura, not the chayma, the tzura, there's room for more than one. Room for more than one, and more than two and three and four. So the whole of life is an adjustment where we move focus away from Gashmi into Ruchni. This is the Teves. And the fact that Rebbe mentioned it, it took up space. Of course it took up space. So in my calendar, there's no room because you got this and you got this. You got 100, every day is a Yom Tov. But as far as the Rebbe is concerned, he was totally wherever he was. Tzemach Tzedek says like this, Avot. Woman is, darf men sein. In Ganzen. Wherever you are, you must be totally. That's the one-liner. Woman is, darf men sein in Ganzen. Now, that's a tremendous challenge because when a person speaks to you and you've got to thinking, you're thinking about this, you've got to go shopping, you've got to this, you can't focus totally. You must have heard that in all these reports, which come out again and again, talking about the Rebbe, the first amazing point, which amazes the politicians, the Rabbonim, they sensed that when the Rebbe was speaking to them, he was totally there. No other concerns affected him. Nothing. Why? Because he was an equal of the Tzemach Tzedek. And the Tzemach Tzedek said it. It means that he was it. Because you've got to think about the Rebbe in his own history. The Rebbe for 32 years. I don't know how long, 33 years, whatever, 40 years ago. In the biography, which he wrote about himself, like he wrote about biography of the Alter Rebbe, the Middle Rebbe. He said, from the born this year, and from this year, from when he was 2 or something till he was 40, Lomad be Hasmoda Umatzliach. That's his total biography. That's not an abbreviation. That was absolutely what's happening. We don't know what he's talking about. Lomad, Hasmoda, Beshkida. It was a Shkida, Hasmoda, I'm not sure the difference. Lomad, Beshkida, Ve'etzliach. Finished. So what's the Mahus of the Rebbe? So just in case you need actual qualifications, you'll hear a story there, you'll hear a story there. But this is what he worked on himself. There was tremendous avodah, I can only guess, but there's little glimpses here and there which have pisgomim, as woman is Davman Gansen. So this, when he talking about Hey Teves, somebody came along and challenged the whole structure. And the Rebbe said, wait a minute, this is not just a challenge for books, a Yerusha of inheritance of the books. It's a challenge to the whole of the Rebbistav. Somebody's challenging that the Rebbe, Kaviochel. So nobody felt that threat. There were Hasidim at that time who said, look, we'll pay it off. We'll go to the people and we'll do a deal with them and we'll get the books, you get the books back. And the Rebbe said, no. He refused the offer. What's Pshat? You can tell me Pshat, what Pshat is. Because we don't understand it. We don't understand it. We're not kelim to understand. But at least we can talk about it. We can talk about it. And these are the things that are going on around us while we're struggling to make a living, to do our shlichus, to do this, and to all this, and to deal with the family and the children that grow up, and there's shidduchim and panos. There's a million problems on everybody's table at every moment. So to focus for an hour or two on a Motzei Shabbos when it comes Hey Teves to see about what's going on here, it's difficult. It's difficult. As a kid, we were interested in, I was a very small child. We were 5 years old, 6 years old. We were very interested because I was born in the wartime. There were battleships, if anybody knows what a battleship is. A battleship. So a battleship, they said like this, a battleship is cruising at, say, 20 miles per hour in the sea. And then it gets instructions to turn around. So it's okay, you turn around. So the first thing that happens, the battleship is going at such a tremendous pace for the battleship. It weighs hundreds and hundreds of tons. So going in a certain direction, so you could turn around. It takes him 3 days to stop. And then it takes him another 3 days to turn around. So this is a battleship. So we're not much different than those battleships. See, to turn a person around genuinely is a voida gedola. In fact, I'm not telling you anything new, because H1, if you look at yourself and you say you want to aim all for allemaal, once and for all, we're doing it. Aim all for allemaal. Famous words, once and for all. It's never mekuyim, because there's no such thing as once and for all. You do a little and a little and a little. And these are what the things they're doing. And if I tell you, by the way, some Fievish which you don't know,
And that is this book. There's a new ladies' seminary been opened in Israel 4 months ago, 5 months ago. And they have adopted social vision as a book which is compulsory reading for the students. And I saw their copy of what one is supposed to, how one achieves it by learning this mimer, and so on and so forth. And this is happening while I'm talking to you. And other institutions are beginning to adopt the same principle because they've discovered that in this book, it's not about the Rebbe, another about the Rebbe, great, very great, very great, 100,000, a million. It's not about that. It's about the Rebbe, what I want you to do. I want my teachings, Hafotzes Hamayonos Chutza, going right back to the story of the Baal Shem Tov, when he decided he would make Aliyas HaNeshama. How you make Aliyas HaNeshama, maybe some people know how to do it. The Baal Shem Tov knew how to do it. Meaning to say, he moved out of this world, translated into English, because in English, it sounds stronger. If I talk to you in Hebrew and Yiddish, it's a diversion. He had a list of Shoma. And he went there and he saw everybody and they were all happy. So it's the Baal Shem Tov, why are they happy? Why are they happy? Oh, maybe they're happy because they think I've passed away. Maybe they're happy because they think I've passed away. Oh, no, but I haven't passed away. I'm still Aloretz. I'm still down here. I'm still down here. Oh, and he's up there. So he went into the Heichel Mashiach. You know what Heichel is? Do you know what Heichel is? Do you know how many shomas or small neshamas are stored in Gan Eden? It's not real to you and to me because you can't touch it. Can't touch it. Famous word from the Ruzhner. The Ruzhner gesagt hat so. Amol ze gesagt hat so. Ich hab nicht kein Guf. So the Hasidim around the Ruzhner were amazed. Ich hab nicht kein Guf. So there was one shtickle Chotzef there, and he slowly went to the Ruzhner and he touched his body. So he says, Rebbe, ich tap Guf, I'm touching your body. Oh, sagt der Ruzhner. Weil du tappst mit Guf, feelst du Guf. You're touching me with your body, and that's why you feel a body. Ich habe nicht Guf. Ich habe nicht Guf. It's perspective. The Rebbe lives, continues on different perspective. What he's doing now, that's why pigeons are on the you're addressing somebody. Whatever. So he's doing something. And that's what the Rebbe is doing. So he's in touch with all this reality. He has a completely different perspective. In Hasidus, of course, we talk about Hasidus. We talk about what we talk about. We talk about Hasidus. We talk about yesh be'ayin, he's a yesh, and ayin, and yesh, and so on and so on. This is Hey Teves. Why are we talking now? Because hey, Teves, okay, Teves and Gershon, he made a situation. You see, you have to believe, by the way, that God created this situation. He created this situation. Now, what does that mean? He created COVID, by the way, as well, just in case you're in any doubt. So the question is, what do you do?
So first of all, so those four excuses you can't say, because you say, I'm not COVID. You could get COVID. So it's disturbed the world. Never in the history of mankind have 8 billion people been touched by a godly message. Okay, it's not godly. So the custom says, oh God, yeah, God. But they've been touched. Oh, they know they've been touched. And it's a call. So this is Hey Teves. Hey Teves is a Yom Segula. What does Segula mean? For heaven's sake, what? Translate the words. What does Segula mean? Rabbi Itzinger, are you still there? Did you go home? This is the model which says, in ordinary circumstances, if Rabbi Itzinger was standing opposite me, I could speak to him, he could not answer, and I could give him a tap on the shoulder, and maybe he'd answer, maybe not. I've got no choice. Mute first. So this can't be a futuristic picture of the Gan Eden. In Gan Eden, you say, is there any interaction between the Shabbos? I don't know, from the stories about it sounds yeah. But here, verstees, we're not up to this Gula. So Rabbi Itzinger refuses to answer me. Okay. That's the story. So let's say L'chaim and Nochamol resolve that the Rebbe is still with us and the Rebbe is watching over us and he's waiting for our reactions. So if a Poshet Yid like myself comes and say, you know what, I've got a new book, and you know what, there's however many people are at this Farbrengen, nobody can say they didn't see the book because I've shown them a picture of the book. And this is a book which is about the Rebbe saying what he wants to do in Hafotza Samayonis Chutza. Means to say, Elakus, Getlichkeit, should be influential in not just analyzing the emes in each thing, but direct that nitzus, hakadusha, which can be directed in the ways of his kavona. L'chaim, everybody. I don't know whether I'll tell you Maisa. Okay, genug Maisa. L'chaim, everybody. L'chaim.
Hi.
That sounds like Rabbi Khan, no? Oh, ya baba mo, ya mama. Ya da da ya 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 ya
Rabbi Vogel, you said before about those of us, Baruch Hashem, Lubavitch Chassidim, we're on the other side.
Pardon?
That we are on the other side. Azayat Irifir Kedok, right? And you said this behemshech to you said this behemshech to the fact that to be masbir to the world, as the Rebbe left Heint, Yatim B'Chayoyi is not exactly something that necessarily people will understand, but we are on the other side. the Poyel, Hey Teves, the whole shturim of Hey Teves, all the sichas that the Rebbe spoke from that very first sicha that you mentioned, and Yud Beis Tammuz, following then Tesvav Tammuz, etc., that was the message. The message was, and the Rebbe was then, as you very special words expressed, the Rebbe's pain, etc., but the Rebbe, the Akoponim on the surface of it, the message was as Hu B'chaim and Yatim B'chayoy. So obviously back then we were listening to the Rebbe say this, but on shlichus and on as shluchim, and we're all shluchim in one way or another, every chassid. So every Jew. Right. So how lepoil do you explain it? Do you, Rabbi Vogel, explain Yatim B'chayoy, or however you want to word it? This is Hey Teves. Hey Teves is the continuity. This is not just a few sfarim, as you said. It's much more than that. So wie teilt man das so ist lepoil in Mishnah, in Drusen de Welt, to unser eigene Nefesh HaBahamis, and then through that to everyone else.
Well, all I can do is repeat, not what I've said, but find new expressions of explanation. One of the earliest, when they were talking about what is Hasidus, because one of the great treasures which we have is in Yonah Shel Teves HaChasidus, right? You're familiar, I'm sure, with in Yonah Shel Teves HaChasidus. But let me tell you a story about that. I'll come back to the language we choose. In Yonah Shel Teves HaChasidus was spoken on Yutes Kislev, delivered by the Rebbe, Tov Shin Chof Hey, 1964. I remember it because
Rabbi Vogel, it was Tov Shin Chof Vov.
Tov Shin Chof Vov, you're right. That's 1965, correct.
It's Chaim Pharaoh.
Oh, Chaim, Shalom Aleichem.
Aleichem Shalom. How are you?
I'm Baruch Hashem. Well, how are you?
I thank the Eibishter, Baruch Hashem, very well. All the better for hearing your Farbrengen.
And all the better for meeting you. So Chaim Pharaoh, verstees, that was Gieten, because Chaim Pharaoh was around, he's been around for quite a time, so maybe he'll justify this remark or not.
Fievish, it was my first Yutes Kislev in Lubavitch.
Is that right? Well, I'll use that in further speeches.
I must tell you something. I felt that the gashmius of the walls was melting away as the Rebbe spoke these sichos.
Well, so let's get this right. That was your first Farbrengen Yutes Kislev.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. We must have been standing on different parts of the room. And you were the first.
I was in 770. I was in 770 because of Rabbi Fievish Vogel.
Right. Okay, look. Farachanifa gaat niet compatch. Okay, so let's put that aside. I'm just trying, I once told somebody, and he got very upset with me. I said, I'm listening to every word you say. And he took it as a criticism. Meaning to say, listening to every word you say, and I want to go on to the next point. You said you felt as if the walls were melting away. Well, that indicates a kind of a poetic personality, which I'm not, okay, something of that sort. Well, let me tell you what I thought. It's interesting, two perspectives. This sikha lasted, as far as I remember, about 2 hours or 2 hours and 5 minutes.
If I remember correctly, it wasn't one sikha.
Okay, look, it lasted a long time. I saw a gap in the middle. Anyway, so the first part, I think I understood. Not really, I think I understood. And the second part, what I thought, this is something unique, this is something special, so I will always remember this very special sikha, which I didn't understand, and I knew I was in the presence of greatness. Fast forward, over the years, I gave shiurim in the Anshe Hasidus. I even Jonathan Sachs. I asked him after he'd finished learning with me the Kutis Sichas. He chose from Aleph till right through till Tes. So after that, I asked him to translate in Yonashal Tersa Hasidus, which he did. And he not only translated the liquid itself, but he wrote his own personal introduction, which was breathtaking. When I turned westwards to New York to investigate if there's a possibility of printing, I was informed somebody has pipped you to the post. This is from Buffalo, Rabbi Gurari, who got a lady professor from Maryland University, I've got her name, and she'd done the translation.
Susan Handelman.
Correct, Susan Handelman, right. Now, so that remained for posterity. I was thinking of retrieving it, but like everything else, I just mislaid it somewhere. So I'm in the throes of now trying to rediscover it. Anyway, let's keep the point. In Yonashal Teresa Hasidus was a milestone. That which was understood before was not understood until that moment. I don't know, maybe other people didn't see it that way, but I saw it that way. And I'll tell you a Maisa, which you may have heard or not. Rabbi Alti Bukit, who lives in Shlichus in Lexington, neighboring Boston, was once driving, and he saw at the bus stop a man who he knew. So he stopped to give him a lift, and he actually gave him a lift. His name was Rabbi Isidore Twersky, a son-in-law of the great Rabbi J.B. Soloveitchik. And he says, so he was in the car for some time, and he said, to him, I'll tell you a Maisa about the Rebbe, which you don't know. Okay. Excuse me. I'll tell you a Maisa about the Rebbe, which you don't know. What's the Maisa? Being a son-in-law of the Rav, JB, he used to go have supper on Friday night. Every Friday night, he went for supper. So, they had the meal, and not them, gesessen, a posho. And what was he doing? Getting learning. We're talking learning the whole time, 2 or 3 hours. One Shabbos, the Shver of Rabbi Twersky turns around to him and says, look, I want to tell you something. Ich habe a Maimah Chassidus from the Rebbe, so I want you to take a nap on Friday afternoon. So you should be really awake because I'd like to learn this Sikha, this Maimah with you. So comes to Friday night, sits down, and he gives him a copy of the Inyana Shel Teisa Chassidus. And they learn it for 6 hours. And these two, they really, left no stone unturned. It was absolutely, probably. Anyway, I learned Fievish. This is the mice he's telling me in the car. He said, and you know what? I was so nisoida that I decided to write a letter to the Rebbe for the first time in my life. I've never written. And he writes to the Rebbe, this is the signal which I heard, this is my source. Alti Buket, Isidore Twersky, talking about this. And he writes a letter to the Rebbe like this. He says, hey, Yois, since your whole object is to flood the world with Chassidus, you will conquer the world if you take my advice. Hey, Yois, you wrote a biur on Moide Ani. Pshat, Remes, Drush, Sod, Chassidus. And how Chassidus gita chayes in Pshat and Remes and Drush and Sod, the ganze Meise. I advise you, I would like to suggest to you, this is what he's writing to the Rebbe. I would like to suggest to you that you do it on every mitzvah. On every mitzvah. And if you will demonstrate Pshat, Remes, Drush and Sod, with the interaction between all these things, you'll be Fievish the ganze Welt. There's nothing more to talk about. You will have the world. You will have the world. So for 9 months, he gets no answer. And one day, the phone rings. Doret Label Grona. Oh, Label Grona. I've got an answer for you. The Rebbe said like this. Chuaschein. Poshut ein li zman. Poshut, I don't have the time. Askilatzian. Goodbye. So this is the sipur which he told to my son-in-law Buket and in the car giving him a lift. The Inyana Shel Chassidus was something exceptional. And the nuances and anyway, so that is a story about why do we bring up Inyana Shel Chassidus? Because you heard it at the same time as I did. Your reaction was very poetic. The walls were melting. I didn't exactly see the walls melting. I just felt very personally and privately that this is beyond me. I couldn't take the whole thing in. Still can't. But since then, I've given hundreds of shiurim, maybe not hundreds, dozens, certainly dozens of shiurim on the Inyana Shel Chassidus. And each time I learn it, I get a new insight, a new marimokim. The thing which took me out, which really took me out of the Kalim, is that I'm just trying to think now. Do you remember Chotzer is koina? Chotzer is koina mitam yad or mitam, I don't know, mitam Chotzer. Wait, Daladamas, yeah, I'm sorry. Daladamas is koina mishar Chotzer. So the Rebbe explains how the Nigla, so the Chassidus, the Nigla, which is Chotzer, Daladamas, so for Kenyan Daladamas, comes as a result of a Gilui in Chassidus. Why? Because when is the Bailus effective? Well, first of all, go back and sort of try to recollect. The Rabbonon Geise given in a Simtor, back alley, which is not the Rishus Yochid, not the Rishus Rabbi. The Rabbonon gave to the Simtor that when a Chafetz falls into this Simtor, and a person is standing nearby, the chidush of Dalad Amos becomes effective. When? Only when the chayfetz falls. If the chayfetz is not falling, he has no balance over the Dalad Amos. The trigger for the balance is the symptom. That's why. Because the Gabbana made a gezerah. Why did they make a gezerah? They made a gezerah because if there's two people around, it'll be a machloikas. So if there'll be machloikas. So in order to diminish the chances of machloikas, they made this gezerah. So how does it work? How does it work? What's the technique? It is because a person has bailus on the Dalad Amos. Why is he Dalad Amos? Because he's three Amos himself. And his hands can stretch another Amma. So this is the mahus, golden word, mahus, which doesn't appear in the Bible once. The golden word, the essence, it triggers it. And that is the only gil that comes through Chassidus. Yeah, so that was and I think that forget about it. So what we're talking about the Farbrengen. And you said I've brought up the idea of and that's what was my effect. And I'll tell you something, this has to be learned and relearned and constantly learned. How can you manage it? It's difficult to manage, but without that, you don't really get a clue in the, I was thinking, Chaim, I'm saying to you, in particle physics, are you familiar?
Not really, no.
Okay, no, a bit. There's enough articles being written about particle physics, which shows an idea in the right way. Now's not the time. I'm just wondering whether there's a phrase in the equivalent of Chassidus, which is called metaphysics. Is there such a thing as meta-particle physics? Okay, I will leave you that homework. Going back to Teves. Teves is this day when there was an opposition, uncalled for, unwarranted, so ridiculous it was from left field in Gansen. And we spoke a lot about the Rebbe's attitude. The Rebbe is alive and responds. And sometimes the answer is no. But it doesn't affect the necessity for communication. And communication, which we have at this moment, is through this oil, what's it called, this Apple. It must go up, yeah. So it's through that. And in these conversations,
Fievish, I'm sorry, I didn't take in the last sentence. The communication is through what?
The communication is through this app, which is called Vogel. Are you familiar?
Yes.
Right. But it goes beyond that. It goes beyond that, that is a constant upward spiraling connection of sensitivity, of knowing what's at stake. What's at stake for the subject, what's at stake for the object, but at stake for the what's at stake for the object is difficult to think about, difficult to think about, even though there's language in Hasidus which does cover these situations and opportunities. So we're saying now, Elochaim, and I'm very pleased to met you, and you're in Eretz Yisrael, yes?
Yes, in Ramat Beit Shemesh.
Ramat Beit Shemesh, okay. I'm sure you're doing a lot of good things and treasuring every opportunity of Hashgacha Pratis, because Hashgacha Pratis is it's the nigla, or not nigla, some say it's in the agenda of important aspects. It's a very important thing that people should understand what Hashgacha Pratis is. Yeah, there was a Maisa with a Babasha Chosid. He was standing outside the Rebbe's room, and a man came over, met him. So he thought, this man is the ideal person who I can contact for this and this job or this task, whatever it is. So he was so spileless. He came into the Rebbe's room, and the Rebbe said to the Rebbe says, B'hashgacha Pratis, I met this person, and he would be. The Rebbe said to him, "Was weißt du wegen Hashgacha Pratis?" Which is a big disappointment to me, because I think I do know a little about it. And so this is the case. The Hashgacha Pratis has to be learned and has to be understood. But besides the Rambams, in the Moed and the Vogel, there's 4 daggers of Hashgacha Pratis, and then he goes on to the Rambams later, and then you go into the Baal Shem, and it goes higher and higher in levels of Hashgacha Pratis. But to exaggerate Hashgacha Pratis, I think, is impossible. That means to say, even though Rebbe says, boss face to her, I don't understand, okay. But it has to do with sensitivity. When you're thinking about yourself, it's difficult to encounter someone else in a meaningful way. And the less one thinks about oneself, the more likely one can engage. The spontaneity of engagement to the insensitive person is nil. And the less awareness of self, and that's one of the avoiders which we're all struggling with. And if one reaches a higher level in the recognition of Hashgacha Pratis, is by the diminution of the self. I mean, even self the Kedusha. I remember Tovshin Yud Tes, Simchas Torah. The Rebbe got up it was Simchas Torah. The Farbrengen took place, whatever, finished about 3 or 4 o'clock. The Rebbe went home for the Suda, and he came back about 5 a.m. And there were, at that time, you would think, it's Tovshin Yutes. There were 40 people, Chassidim, around the table opposite Mizrach. The Rebbe was standing on a table opposite Mizrach, facing to Ma'ariv, facing to the doors outside, in the shalash, what was used for Farbrengen. They had this tarpaulin over, Anyway, so the Rebbe was speaking, and he taught the niggun, everyone knows, Shamil's niggun. That was he told that niggun on Tosh in Simchas Torah, 5 a.m. I think 5 a.m. Yeah, 5 a.m. And and the Rebbe had what was his custom, I think. He had a half bottle of Smirnoff vodka in his hand, and anyone who was makabel on themselves to take his sofa in Nimbus Chasidus, he would give them mashka, which of course everybody took. There were 40, 50 people. But this, and I remember Sholem Roosevelt, he was completely beyond repair. Gewalget on the floor, somewhere near the bottom. And the Rebbe started this niggun, and he told the story, which everybody knows. I'm not going to repeat it. The story that the moshel, and then the Rebbe ended up with the neshama. The neshama had a sheifa, a desire to go on high, aber zayesh mi she'oihev. Don't have to translate what that means. He is. Okay, where are we up to?
Oh,
yeah. So in this niggun, the Rebbe was explaining, it took a long time. He sang the niggun 1 and 2, and even people couldn't get the niggun because the end goes, it ends, you see, people go like this, which is wrong. The Rebbe tried to correct it a few times. It goes, it goes up. That's the thing. Anyway, so it was trying to correct it, and so this problem of being and being self-abnegation. Self-abnegation is just it's a hoax with words. It's just self-abnegation. It doesn't ring. It doesn't resonate anywhere. Anyway, so this is just a maimer muska. So this was in Tovshin Yutes. This was in Tovshin Yutes, and so everybody went back, and in fact, it came back for this. Farbrengen, the Rebbe spent more time on teaching this niggun, and this is I don't know which words to use. I don't want to use Yiddish. I don't want to use Hebrew. I don't want to use English, because this doesn't say what the reality is. The reality is reserved for every single individual to interpret that reality, if he accepts this notion, what we're talking about. So it's a very highly subjective thing. And the problems of speaking, there's a famous Maisa with two Hasidim in the old days when they came to see each other after 20 years. And they said, they come to a meeting, they're going to meet. Fine. So what do? They put a bottle of mashka on the table, poured out 2 glasses of mashka, And each one, Chavedim, haven't seen each other 20 years. They looked at each other and looked at each other and looked at each other and cried and looked at each other. And after a couple of hours, they poured the mashke back into the bottle. Zehu. You see, I know when I'm teaching people, I say that God created the world with the Hebrew language. He said, how do I know? Bereshis. So who said Bereshis? Who said Bereshis? Who said it? Yeah, it was the Eibishter who instructed Moshe Rabbeinu to write down Bereshis. Okay. The Borelikim? What was it? What happened? Then he goes on. There was a Horus. What was the land? All that stuff. And God said, Yehi Oher. So that's the first thing. He said, Yehi Oher, Yehi Oher, Yehi Oher. You see, I would like to communicate with people by just looking at people and feeling that they're looking at me and we're engaging. Because once I say something, it's just not it. Maybe I'm saying this here.
Rabbi Vogel.
Are you saying L'chaim there?
L'chaim muss man sagen. You touched on Ashgacha Pratis. So Ashgacha Pratis, the shir in Ashgacha Pratis we've begun now, and we can continue, and I hope to continue learning more about Ashgacha Pratis from you. I'll tell you what Ashgacha Pratis. You mentioned before Derech Hamuna. How did Derech Hamuna come to hate Teves? Why was that safer? You mentioned it before. So, I'd like to just use this as a springboard to bring out a certain point. That the Rebbe told Rabbi Krinsky, soll sein gesund und stark, before going to the oil on Beis Kislev, that he should be there when the Sfarim come, and he should open up one of the boxes and pull out a sefer, and whatever sefer he pulls out, he should bring with him to the oil. And Rabbi Klein, Oliver Sholem, drove the Rebbe to the oil on Beis Kislev. And then when the Sfarim came back, they were taken into Maskiris, and Rabbi Krinsky, Rosein gesund und stark, opened up one of the boxes and took, I'm sorry, the Rebbe said to take 3 Sfarim, and it was, the Rebbe Fievish told him not to look what he's taking. Take 3 Sfarim and bring them to the oil. And he drove to the oil, and he brought them there. And he was the one that drove the Rebbe back, and one of those Farim was the Derech Hamuna, which the Rebbe had geheißen zu drucken. So the Ashgacha Pratis, which are Ashgacha Pratis, that if that came out, the Rebbe geheißen das drucken. You know, a few days ago came the Sefer Teres Menachem Chelik Ayin Aleph. And over there, in Shvat, Tovshin Lamed Gimel, there's a Sikha over there by the Farbrengen, where Zalman Shazar gives the Rebbe 2 kisvei yad, one from the Alter Rebbe, one from the Mittler Rebbe, and he tells the Rebbe that now that he's giving the Rebbe these 2 kisvei yad, it's basically his oitzer of kisvei yad is emptying out. And the Rebbe told him that he hopes that from emptying out his oitzer, that sich anfüllen mehr Sfarim and afotzah mayonis everywhere else. And then he sort of complains to the Rebbe that he was in Boston by visiting Yasher Ber, who knows what's going on, and how come he didn't know about the Sfarim, the Salcho Liozna that was printed a while ago. And there said Sapele, etc. And there was, Deborah told him that it's Takapella that he didn't know about it. But the bottom line is that every sefer has to be printed, and the more that's revealed, the more goes out. You mentioned before, it's everything's Ashgacha Pratis. You mentioned before about Kuntis Inon Shoter Sachsidus that Rabbi Sachs, Olav Sholem, translated. It's a choiv kodesh these days that such a thing is found and is printed with a shturim, for the Rebbe for Chassidus, and obviously the fact that he just passed away. This would be a tremendous way of Taka bringing Chassidus to the Welt in a truly amazing way. Als es doch Ashgacha Pratis, hey Teves hat der Rebbe doch geheißen Stürmen. Und auf Käfnusfarim, Tonnensfarim, und so, ja, Tag verbunden mit Sfarim. So this is it. I mean, if Derech Hamuna was pulled out of a box and that was the Ashgacha Pratis to be printed, and you mentioned this Kuntes Inon Shoteres Achsidus, which can now Saime Hetes von dir, Baruch Hashem, aside from Rabbi Faro, with all the tiurim of what it was like, having it printed now in English. With a new translation from Yemel to Ashgacha Pratis. It laid for many years, and now is for sure the time to make sure to print it.
I would second that suggestion. I think it's an amazing idea, and I think if it's done Le'ilui Nishmas, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Zichrona Livracha, there are thousands of people who would want to acquire such a sefer and learn it. Le'ilui nishmasai.
Story. Because it's excessive drinking, you know. It just, anyway, look, it's in hand. It's in hand. I don't want to tell you what the hand is. It's a problematic hand. Anyway, it looks there's a few problems associated with that, but hopefully we'll get over it. And please God, with the brachas and good wishes from all the people assembled, Mitzvah Hashem.
We're talking l'chaim for them. That's something to say l'chaim for. L'chaim. In this discussion, by the way, with Shazar and the Rebbe, this Twersky that you mentioned before is also mentioned in this discussion.
How?
Let me bring it up. I have it in front of me. One second.
Well. Knowledge is not what you know, but where to find it. Okay.
Yeah, there you are. Here.
Okay.
He says to the Rebbe like this. He tells the Rebbe about the pgisha he had with the Rabbi Yoshe Ber. Shetomid medaber b'hislavus oidos teres Chabad. Heichel milimudu be'aldusa be'chaslavich eitzel melamed Chabadnik ve'ad hayom yoinik mimayonis elu. And as marbet to bring the drushes of the Alter Rebbe and L'Kutei Torah, and Shazar was upset that Rabbi Yoshe Ber lo yira me'olam esifrei mamorei admur azok and sachal liozna shenitus u'miksavet kedesh mikvar. Anyway, it goes back and forth, and the Rebbe says Zed var pele etzli, because in Boston is da geise Kvutze von Anash, was treffen sich mit dem Farbrengen mevim lo inyoni tfus. And it says over there that Shazar mentioned that in this meeting, it was also his Eidim, Rabbi Yitzchak Osher Tversky, and the Rebbe had gesagt, hat mir schon einmal erzählt about his Histatfus in a Chug Limud Achsidis, which happens by you. As he sagt the Rebbe to Shazar. Ashgacha Pratis, this sefer was just came to everyone's home a few days ago.
Okay, let me say, if we're now trading Ashgacha Pratis, I want to give you another problem. people, maybe the few people, Tali knows about this. There's a magazine which is called Tradition. Tradition is put out still to this day, I think. I saw a copy in Dante recently. It's put out by the Rabbinical Council of America, RCA. It is YU dominated, okay? And Rabbi Sachs wrote an article in Tradition something like 20, 30 years ago. And he wrote a 25-page article on, he took Rabbi Soloveitchik's book, The Lonely Man of Faith, and he wrote a précis of that book, which took up about 6 pages. So he wasn't shying away from quoting JB in the fullest way. And then he said, but I would like to offer an alternative perspective. And in the next 6, 8 pages, whatever it was, he wrote a perspective of Chabad, Perek Lamed Beis in Tanya, and he concludes that with the Sikha, which the 10 Meraglim went out, and they said what they did, what they did, and so this Sikha, he claims, is the answer to JB's perspective on the lonely man of faith, which is no majestic man. You know, people who've read outside Chabad know, read JB. I think it's one of the books that people read. I've never read it, but, but people do read it. And he said, and here we have a classic example that even though these spies, Yehoshua and Kalev, were men of faith, they were not lonely. And that's the end of the article. Now, what's the problem? I saw another copy of Tradition printed at a later date, and it's an analysis of JB's Torah, and that part is excluded. So there's been some rethink or rewrite, and I'm talking to Tali mainly because I think I needed to use this article for some correspondence which I have with some people. So I'll tell you the whole story. If you read the Jewish news, which nobody reads, the Jewish news, it's one of those free newspapers which you can pick up from any grocery store free. And they claim that they have more readership than the Jewish Chronicle. Okay? This is only addressed to people who understand what I'm talking about. And they published an article 2 weeks ago by a rabbi, and this is Rabbi Faro, maybe you'd know something about this. A Rabbi Taragin, Moshe Taragin. He's a Rosh Yeshiva in one of these YU yeshivas in Etzion, where it was something like that. Can you help me? Rabbi Faro. Okay.
So you're saying that Jewish News published an article by Moshe Taradin?
Yeah.
And what was
what was the article? I'm sorry. What was the article?
Right.
This article is to help non-Hasidim celebrate Yud Tes Kislev. And I know they find it very difficult because a full-page article in the Jewish News of a week or 2 or 3 ago. I wrote a letter to him, congratulating him on his article. It was just this week, early this week. So I don't know what's going on, but in the big mix of Afatsamai, the most sensitive, respectful audience are to be found among YU graduates, and there's Ganze Tenua, you know, the whole movement. And he got smicha from YU, you know, and he's been in City College, you know, he's been around, but he's in Israel now. So, but if somebody meets Chaim Faro, he's gone. But so if you can get that message to him, because maybe you could pick it up the contact. Anyway, let's be mesameach, let's be joyful and happy. Ashreinu matov chelkeinu. Sounds, Ashreinu matov chelkeinu, it just sound kind, you know. Ashreinu matov chelkeinu. It's kind of a exclusive club type of, and in today's world, you're supposed to be more giving and open and not exclusive. So that's a problem which we all have. If you don't have the problem, it's fine, you know. But if you do have the problem is shared by other people too. And this is one of the unique, this is the ultimate paradox. The ultimate paradox was coined by Rabbi Moses Cordovera, known as the Ramak. I'm not sure, it could be somebody else because it's a Sefer Avodas Yisrael. Please help me, Shaul, if you know the authorship of this. Tali, you should know the authorship of, and it's
Rabbi Moshe Dikatilia.
No, it's I don't know.
Meir Dikatilia.
No, it's not, I don't know. Anyway, he said the ultimate paradox.
And he's the author of the Derech Emunah as well.
Derech Emunah. Oh, no. This Derech Emunah just now was the Rebbe brought. No, it's not. It's not that. No, it doesn't matter. The thing is this. We, as we get older, understand, tolerate more dichotomies and paradoxes within our own behavior and within the behavior of others. That is a process which starts when you're 2 years old and 3 years old, and initially you don't want to tolerate anything or anybody, and then you go into education, which sadly God brought the Nefesh L'Kis late. And always remember that Akdima Tanose. There was an opinion which existed before you came into this world. And you are a antidote, postscript. You're just an extra. But the firm case for the world being a world has been established. Klipo Kodmo Lepri. I don't know if you can follow me once. He followed the line. And he said, Geshem sheyesh leikoy beligvul kach yesh leikoy begvul de minata oimagain at mechasem shlei musay. God is not great. That's a secondary matter. Secondary matter. The idea is shleimus, perfection. And that perfection goes from the very source, the very core. Good night. Goes down into the very fiber of our existence. This is who we are. A dichotomy, a paradox, never to be resolved, never, ever to be resolved. If you want to get out of the ship now, you can exit. This is which we live in. And the more ability of ours, when we're talking to another Jew, to see him as an equal, which is very difficult. That is, to that degree, the success in the engagement, in the hafotzas mayonos of what we're trying to practice. And if there's a grain of intolerance because of superiority, real or imaginary, real or imaginary, real or imaginary, probably more imaginary than real, but that can be discussed. This is, and one grows older, one sees this bigger world, a bigger picture, until we see the biggest picture of all when we're informed about it, but when we can integrate that perspective into daily behavior, integration into our psyche, which cannot be delayed because you can't wait until a person gets older, because the Rebbe is in a hurry. I remember a thought from Rabbi Dubov. He was talking the reverse. He said, the Alter Rebbe gesagt, I can't see where, he said like this, Va'avadetem mehero, du sollst verlenden the eilerisch. You should destroy the hurry. So everything is a man. Everything is for every quote I give, you can give another quote, which is opposite. And that's all right. That's all right. The challenge is to live in both worlds at the same time and live properly. As I said, we'll say, woman is darf man sein in Ganzen, and at the same time, look, it's Hey Teves. When it happened, Hey Teves, 40 years ago, 30, whenever it happened, it was one moment. I looked at it in one way. And the older I get, I look at it in a different way. And every one of us is older than the year previously. And the sense of maturity is not certain, because a person can set his maturity into reverse. If I'm talking too obliquely, Sally, you can tell me, is this too oblique? Obviously, we share the same experience. We've got this position, and therefore, Leman Hashem. When I say about social vision, okay, I've got a social vision, but I'll tell you the social vision which I showed everybody before. This is a pool. It's a Foster Mayonis, and it's a Foster Mayonis which gets to grip. It's not milmaila matter. Too many things we read is milmaila matter. Except Shema Yisrael was not milmaila matter. Shema Yisrael, Shema Elokeinu, Shema Echad, was in response to the suspicion of Yaakov Avinu. He said, wait a minute, maybe there's something wrong. Oh, no, Shema Yisrael, Hashem. It's the recognition that there's always going to be a Maila matter, and there's always going to be a Matal matter. This is the Bria. This is the whole Bria. You can't have part. You can't live in part. You have to live everywhere to the degree it's permissible, but in your mind to recognize that there are this dichotomy. Anyway, genug geredet. I've got a shiur tomorrow morning. I wish everybody l'chaim, sei gesund, and that's it. L'chaim.